My sister tapped her spoon against her champagne glass, stood up at my baby shower, and smiled like she was about to give a sweet toast. Then she looked straight at my belly and said, "This child was a mistake." My mom actually snorted and laughed. My dad laughed too, like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all year. And the room went weirdly quiet, except for the soft clink of ice in cups and someone's nervous cough. I remember staring at the pastel balloons, the little welcome baby banner, and thinking, oh, so this is who they really are. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done right there? Cry, scream, throw cake? Because I didn't do any of that. I smiled, picked up my purse, and quietly left my own baby shower. But to understand why that moment didn't just break my heart, it detonated my entire family, let me take you back. Growing up, my sister Kara was the sun, and the rest of us were expected to orbit her, especially me. Kara was loud, pretty, dramatic, and always going through something. I was the one who got straight A's, paid my own way, and learned early that being easy didn't earn love in my house. It just made you convenient. My mom used to say it like it was a compliment. Leah's low maintenance, she'd tell people, as if I was a houseplant. Kara needs more attention. She's sensitive. Sensitive meant Kara could scream at dinner because her boyfriend didn't text back, and my dad would rub her shoulders like she was the victim of a tragedy. If I ever got upset about something, my mom would tilt her head and go, "Are you hormonal?" And when Kara messed up, my parents cleaned it up, every time. When Kara dropped out of community college after one semester, my mom blamed the school. When Kara maxed out 2 credit cards, my dad handled it. When she got a DUI at 24, my mom cried about how unfair it was that the officer didn't let her off with a warning. Meanwhile, I worked nights at a grocery store in college and did homework on my breaks. I paid my rent on time. I didn't ask for help because asking meant begging, and begging meant they could say no. You know what's wild? I didn't even hate them for it back then. I just accepted it, like the air, like gravity. And then I got pregnant. Not in some chaotic, accidental way. My husband, Ethan, and I had been trying. Quietly, carefully. We'd had 2 losses I didn't even tell my family about because I couldn't stand the idea of them treating my grief like gossip. When the test finally showed 2 lines and my hands started shaking so hard I almost dropped it, Ethan wrapped his arms around me and said, "Hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna be those parents we always wished we had." That line hit me so hard, I had to sit down. We waited until the 2nd trimester to tell anyone. We told Ethan's parents first. His mom cried, his dad hugged me like I was already family, not just married into it. Then we told my parents. My mom's reaction was complicated. She clapped once, like she was applauding a performance, and said, "Well, I guess that's happening." My dad looked up from his phone and said, "Is it a boy?" I laughed awkwardly because what else do you do when your own father treats your baby like a fantasy football draft? Then Kara, who was sitting on the couch like she lived there, which she did, on and off, leaned forward and said, "Oh my God, Leah, are you sure you're ready? Like, a baby is a lot." The way she said it, like I was a teenager who'd made a mistake behind a dumpster, made my cheeks burn. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm 30, I said, trying to keep my voice light. "And yes, we're ready." Kara's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to me. "I mean, no offense, I just don't see you as, maternal." My mom laughed. "Oh, Kara, stop." But she didn't correct her. She didn't defend me. She just smiled, like Kara was being silly. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. Because even now, even with a baby on the way, I still wasn't the main character in my own life around them. And the baby shower, that was my mom's idea. "People will think it's strange if we don't do something," she said on the phone, like my pregnancy was a public relations issue. Besides, Kara has been dying to plan an event. That should have been my first warning, because Kara planning my baby shower was like a fox offering to babysit your chickens. But I agreed anyway, because there was still this little part of me that wanted a normal moment, a warm family memory, a photo where my mom looked proud and my dad looked present, and my sister looked human. We held it at my parents' house. Their living room was filled with pink and gold decorations, Kara's choices, obviously. There was a balloon arch so big it swallowed the corner of the room. The table was covered with tiny cupcakes and punch and a cake that said, "Oh baby," in glittery icing. Kara wore white. Yes, white to my baby shower. Ethan leaned close and murmured, "Is she trying to marry your pregnancy?" I almost laughed. Almost. Kara floated around the room like she was hosting an award show. She hugged people with one arm, took selfies with the other, and kept saying things like, "I worked so hard on this," loud enough for everyone to hear. My mom was in her element too, smiling, showing people around, telling stories about Kara as if Kara was the one having a baby. And my dad? He kept disappearing to check something in his office. I tried to enjoy it. I really did. I opened gifts and smiled and said thank you. I played the stupid games. I even laughed when someone guessed a baby's name wrong, and Ethan whispered, "We should name him Kevin just to mess with everyone." But underneath it all, my chest felt tight, like I was waiting for something bad to happen. And here's the thing. Part of me had been waiting for that moment for months. Because while my family was busy acting like my pregnancy was a minor inconvenience to Kara's life, I discovered something that made my stomach drop so hard I thought I might throw up. Ethan and I had been saving for a house, not a mansion, just something with enough space for a nursery and a small backyard. But the market was brutal, so I started cutting expenses like crazy. I went through old bank statements, subscriptions, anything I could. That's when I noticed something odd. Every month, for years, there had been small transfers from an account I didn't recognize into my parents' account. Not huge, just steady, like a drip. I wouldn't have even noticed if I hadn't seen my own name attached to the account number. My name. I called the bank. My heart was pounding the whole time because I genuinely thought it might be identity theft or some ancient account from when I was a kid. The woman on the phone verified my identity and said, "Yes, Miss Harris, that account is in your name. It's a trust account." A trust? I went cold. What trust? She hesitated, like she wasn't allowed to say much. I can tell you the trustee was listed as Margaret Harris. My grandmother. My dad's mom. The only person in that family who ever looked at me like I mattered. Grandma Margaret had died 3 years earlier. Everyone acted devastated at the funeral, especially my mom, who cried the loudest for a woman who never liked her. Afterward, my dad told me there wasn't much left. The medical bills took everything, he'd said, shaking his head. But now I was hearing my grandmother had set up a trust in my name? So I did what I always did. I didn't confront. I investigated. I called the number the bank gave me for the trust's legal office, and when the receptionist said, "Yes, Miss Harris, we've been waiting for you to call," I nearly dropped my phone. Waiting for me? I met with the attorney 2 days later. Ethan came with me because my hands wouldn't stop sweating. The attorney was an older woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice, and she slid a folder across the table. "Your grandmother established the trust when you were 18, she said. It was intended for your education, your first home, and your future child." My throat tightened. My future child? The attorney nodded. She added an amendment shortly before she passed. She was very clear. She wanted to ensure you were protected because she believed your parents would prioritize your sister. I let out this small, broken laugh. She was right. The attorney's expression didn't change. The trust was not supposed to be accessed by anyone without your signature once you turned 25. Ethan sat up. So how was money leaving the account? The attorney's eyes sharpened. That's the issue. There were withdrawals approved with a signature that appears to be yours. My body went numb, but I know, she said gently, because the signatures don't match the ones you provided today. If you've ever had the ground drop out from under you, you know that feeling, like your brain is trying to catch up to reality and failing. Someone had forged my signature and drained my trust. And I already knew who it was before the attorney said the next words. We also found that the funds were transferred to an account belonging to your parents and then routed to a business account under your sister's name. Kara. Of course it was Kara. But here's the part that really made my blood turn to ice: the amount. It wasn't small. It was enough for a down payment on a house, enough to pay off my student loans twice, enough to change my life. And my parents had been laughing about how I didn't need help while they quietly fed my sister with money that was meant for me. Tell me honestly, what would you have done the moment you found out? Because I wanted to drive straight to my parents' house and scream until the windows rattled. But Ethan did something unexpected. He said, "Don't react, not yet." I stared at him. "What do you mean, not yet?" He leaned in, voice low. "If you confront them, they'll deny it, they'll cry, they'll twist it, and you'll walk away feeling crazy. We do this smart." The attorney nodded. "If there is forgery, this becomes criminal. But the strongest case comes from documentation. Quietly, carefully." So that's what I did. I gathered evidence. Bank statements, transfer records, signature comparisons, copies of the trust documents. And while I was at it, because I'm not stupid, I pulled the financial records from my dad's small construction company. Because yes, I worked for my dad. Not because I wanted to, because my mom had begged. "It would mean so much to your father if you helped," she'd said, like I was donating a kidney. I did their bookkeeping from home, part-time. I told myself it was temporary, that I was helping family. Turns out, I'd been helping them hide things. Because once I started digging, I found more. Unpaid payroll taxes, loans to Kara's business disguised as vendor payments, receipts that didn't match invoices, expenses labeled equipment that were clearly luxury purchases. My dad's company wasn't just messy, it was bleeding. And Kara's boutique, it wasn't thriving. It was being kept alive with stolen money and creative accounting. Every time my dad had said, "We're tight this month," every time my mom had guilted me into helping, every time Kara had posted on Instagram like she was a self-made entrepreneur, it had all been built on fraud. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for what was mine. I was going to take control of my life so completely they couldn't twist it from me again. So yes, I still went to the baby shower. I still smiled. I still opened gifts. And while Kara strutted around in white like she owned the room, I had a folder in my purse, thin, plain, and heavy as a weapon. Now, back to that moment. Kara clinked her spoon against her glass. Everyone turned. She lifted her chin, eyes sparkling with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. "I just want to say something," she announced, "because we're all thinking it." My stomach tightened. Ethan's hand found my knee under the table. Kara looked right at me. "Leah has always been impulsive." She made a face like she was trying to be nice. "And I just worry she doesn't understand what she's doing." People shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Oh no." My mom smiled like this was adorable. My dad finally looked up from his phone. Kara continued, voice sweet and poisonous. "I mean, don't get me wrong, babies are cute, but sometimes a child is just a mistake." Then she actually pointed at my belly. This child was a mistake. There was a second where the room froze, like even the balloon stopped moving. And then my mom laughed, loud. My dad laughed too, shaking his head like Kara had told a great joke. I felt heat rush up my neck. My ears rang. My hands went cold. And what hurt most wasn't Kara. It was my parents laughing. Because in that laugh was everything they'd ever told me without saying it. Your pain is entertainment. Your life is optional. Your baby is collateral. Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. What the hell is wrong with you? Kara blinked, offended. It was a joke. God, you people are so sensitive. I looked at my mom. Did you think that was funny? My mom waved her hand like I was being dramatic. Leah, don't start. You know how Kara is. I looked at my dad. Dad? He shrugged. You're gonna have to toughen up. Parenting's hard. And that's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly, quietly, cleanly, like a string that finally breaks after being stretched too long. I stood up. My voice came out calm, which surprised even me. Okay. Kara smirked like she'd won. Okay. I picked up my purse. I looked around the room at all the faces, some horrified, some uncomfortable, some pretending not to see. Then I said, enjoy the cake. And I walked out. No screaming, no tears, just my footsteps on the porch, the cold air hitting my face, and the sound of the door closing behind me like a final sentence. Ethan followed, furious. Leah! I held up a hand. Not here. We got in the car. My hands shook on my lap, but my voice stayed steady. Drive. He looked at me. Are you okay? I stared out the window at my childhood street, the neighbors' houses, the familiar lamps. No, but I'm done. That's when I realized something else. Kara didn't stand up to say that because she was brave. She stood up because she thought I couldn't do anything about it. She thought I'd swallow it, like I always did. And here comes the part that still makes my heart pound. Instead of going home, I told Ethan to drive us to the attorney's office. It was closed, because of course it was, but I had the attorney's direct number. I called, and when she answered, I said, I'm ready. There was a pause. Then she said, Are you sure? I glanced at Ethan, then down at my belly. I've never been more sure of anything. So we filed. Forgery, misuse of trust funds. And because the trust was set up with very clear conditions and reporting requirements, the attorney didn't just have a case. She had leverage. And then we did the second thing. I resigned from my dad's company that night. I emailed him a simple message. I will no longer be handling your bookkeeping. Do not contact me about work again. But I didn't stop there. Remember those payroll tax issues and fake vendor payments? Yeah. I packaged the evidence and sent it to the appropriate agencies. Not out of revenge, out of survival. Because if my name was tied to their books and the government came knocking later, I wasn't going down with them. I protected my baby. I protected my future. And then, this is where the twist hit them like a truck. I opened the last document in the folder my grandmother's attorney had given me. A letter from my grandmother. It wasn't long, just a page, but it changed everything. My grandmother had owned the house my parents lived in, not my dad, her. And in her will, she had left the house to me. Not immediately, because she knew my parents would fight it. She'd put it in a trust too, with a condition. I would receive full ownership when I had formed my own family, meaning marriage and/or a child. She'd done it quietly, strategically, like she was still protecting me from beyond the grave. And my parents? They'd been living in that house on borrowed time, laughing in my face, while the foundation was literally mine. You won't believe what happened next. 3 days after the baby shower, my mom called like nothing had happened. Her voice was sugary. Hi, sweetie. Are you still mad? I didn't respond. She sighed dramatically. Kara feels terrible. You know she didn't mean it. I said, Mom, I'm not discussing the baby shower. Her tone sharpened. Then what are you discussing? I took a breath. The trust. Silence. So thick I could hear her breathing. What trust? She said, too quickly. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. The one Grandma Margaret set up for me. The one with my forged signature. The one you and Dad routed into Kara's business. Her voice went small. Leah, you're confused. No, I said. I'm informed. Then she did exactly what Ethan predicted. She cried. Not real crying, performance crying, the kind with sniffles and gasps and how could you accuse us? I let her go for a few seconds. Then I said, Mom, the attorney has the bank records. She stopped mid-sob. And then the mask slipped. Her voice turned cold. You're really going to do this while you're pregnant? Do you want stress? Do you want to hurt the baby? There it was. Even now, she tried to make my boundaries sound like violence. I said, you already hurt the baby when you laughed. She exploded. We did everything for you. I laughed once, short and bitter. Name one thing you did for me that you didn't also to control me. She hung up. My dad called next. His voice was low, threatening. You think you're smart? You think you can take us down? I said, I'm not taking you down. You did that yourselves. He hissed. Kara needed that money. I felt my jaw tighten. I needed it too. It was mine. He snapped. You have a husband. Kara has nobody. Because she burns everyone, I said. Then I told him the second part. The house is mine, I said. Grandma left it to me. He actually laughed, like it was absurd. That's not true. It is, I said, and the trust condition was met. His laugh died. For the first time in my life, I heard fear in my father's voice. Leah, don't be stupid. And that's when I realized they hadn't known. Or maybe they'd suspected and buried it. Either way, they'd spent years acting like they owned everything when my grandmother had been quietly holding the deed in my name. Kara showed up at my door 2 days later. No warning, just banging and ringing the bell like she was the police. Ethan opened the door and stood in the frame, arms crossed. No. Kara leaned around him and saw me behind. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, from rage. You're ruining my life, she shouted. I stepped forward. You ruined your life when you forged my signature. She scoffed. Oh my God, shut up. It was just money. Just money, Ethan said. It was her grandmother's protection for our child. Kara pointed at my belly again like she couldn't help herself. Your child is a mistake, and you know it. You just wanted attention. I felt something hot rise in me, but I kept my voice steady. Leave. She laughed, harsh. You can't tell me what to do. Ethan took a step forward. Actually, we can. Get off our property or I'm calling the cops. Kara's face twisted. You think you're better than me? I looked her dead in the eye. No, I think I'm done being less. Her mouth opened like she was going to spit something else, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face changed. Panic. She looked up. What did you do? I shrugged. I protected my family. She hissed. You're a snake. I tilted my head. No, I'm the person you kept stepping on until I stood up. She stormed off, and as she walked to her car, she yelled over her shoulder, You'll regret this. I watched her go and thought, no, you will. Within 2 weeks, my parents' world started cracking. My dad's company got flagged. Suddenly, he was busy with paperwork. My mom stopped posting smiling family photos online. Kara's boutique, this successful business she bragged about, suddenly had a temporary closure sign in the window. And then my attorney called me with the update that made me sit down. The trust is being restored, she said. But there's more. Your grandmother's letter and documents show clear intent. If your parents continue to interfere, we can pursue additional action. I swallowed. What about the house? The attorney paused. It's legally yours. You can choose what you want to do. Ethan found me sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. He knelt in front of me. Talk to me. I whispered, They're going to be homeless. He didn't flinch. They stole from you. They humiliated you. They laughed at your baby. I covered my belly with my hands. I don't want revenge. I just want freedom. Ethan nodded. Then choose freedom. So I did. I didn't show up at their house screaming. I didn't post online. I didn't send dramatic texts. I sent a formal notice through the attorney. My parents had 90 days to vacate the house or sign a lease agreement with me. And if you're wondering what they did, if they apologized, if they owned it, if they finally saw me, no. They tried to bargain. My mom called and said, "We can just pretend this never happened." My dad called and said, "You'll destroy the family." Kara texted me, "I hope your baby hates you." And in that moment, I felt something strange. Relief. Because it confirmed what I needed to know. They weren't going to change. So I changed. Ethan and I used part of the restored trust, money that was always meant for this, to put a down payment on a small house across town. It wasn't huge, but it had a sunny kitchen and a spare room that became the nursery. I painted the walls while Ethan built the crib, and every time my back hurt, he'd say, "Our kid is gonna know what peace feels like." My parents, meanwhile, moved into a rental. Kara bounced between friends until people got tired of her drama and excuses. Funny how sensitive doesn't work when you can't guilt people into funding your life. A month before my due date, my mom sent me a message that just said, "Are you really going to let us miss our grandchild's birth?" No apology, no accountability, just entitlement. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed, "You laughed when your granddaughter was insulted. You don't get access to her just because we share blood." And I blocked her. I know some of you are going to say, "But they're family." Listen, family is not a permission slip to abuse you. And here's the last twist I didn't expect. Once I stopped chasing them, my life got quieter and better. My blood pressure dropped, my sleep improved, my home felt safe. I stopped bracing for the next insult. I stopped practicing fake smiles in my head before seeing them. When my baby was born, our daughter, Hazel, she came out with Ethan's eyes and this tiny, furious cry like she had something to say to the world. Ethan held her and whispered, "Hi, kiddo. You weren't a mistake. You were a miracle." And I cried. Not because I was broken, because I was free. So yeah, that day at my baby shower, my sister stood up and called my child a mistake, and my parents laughed. And I didn't scream, I didn't throw cake, I didn't beg them to love me right. I quietly left, and I took everything they thought they had power over. Now tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you forgive them or walk away like I did?